Okay.
So thank you very much, Richard, for this opportunity, and thanks to all our participants and the co-presenters. Richard had already made the introduction, so I wouldn't spend much time in introducing myself anymore. And starting with my presentation, I would like to just highlight a few myths that usually comes up, a few myths that usually come up in, say, scholarship applications. So we get these questions of whether or not I need GRE or GMAT test scores, whether or not in English test results are a requirement, whether or not, you have to be a first class student, a super, genius with 4.0 GPA, whether or not you have to have like academic publications, especially in the case of a PhD, and also whether or not you need some kind of experience in the research field, just as Richard mentioned, like we've all had experience from the academia, research, TA, teaching assistantships, and whether or not fresh graduates, have kind of higher chances than those who have kind of graduated years before moving on for postgraduate studies. So pretty much what I would say is all these things depend. It really depends. And in most cases, you don't even need it. In most cases, like 90% of the cases. I know in the UK, I'm not sure if Bediako, you've come across any university in the UK asking for GMAT test scores. Not at all.
No.
And yeah, and then it occurs in the case of, say, US for some schools, and here in Canada it's mostly doesn't happen, but I know for MBA programs a few schools might ask for like a GMAT or GRE scores for MBA, and even with that you can find a way out of it, because if you, for instance, you are a banker in Ghana, you have like 5 to 10 years of experience, and you're thinking about coming to Canada for your MBA, and they're asking for GRE, you can just write to them telling them, you know what, I have these years of experience, I'm coming to further studies just to help my banking career, and blah, 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 blah. I'm not going into academia whatsoever. And they will waive it out for you completely. It happens. And one more thing, when it comes to English test scores, in Canada here, they don't usually ask the test scores if you have studied in a university that English was used as, the medium of instruction. You just need to ask for an English proficiency test score certificate from your school. And also, there's a lot of sound.
Yeah, sound is coming from.
Yeah. So, and also when it comes to the GPA, you don't really need the first class or the 4.0 thing. I know it will give you an upper hand, but usually it's not the requirement. In our batch for the Commonwealth Scholarship, one of my colleagues had like a lower, and then she actually had a scholarship. So it depends on how you package your whole application. In her case, she has a lot of experiences that were very much relevant to the scholarship, so she had it. And when it comes to publications, yes, publications are very, very important. It will give you like an upper hand, but it does not necessarily have to be an academic, because these days I know a lot of people are very good. They have like websites, they write blogs that are very good. So if, for instance, you are into food security and you have a blog on food security and you write a lot of analytical and, very, very convincing articles, you can submit these articles as part of your application, because what they are looking for is your analytical ability. So to be able to express yourself in, say, an article or on your blog, and if they read it, they will get convinced rather than, but there again, academic publication is a plus, but if you don't have it and you have something similar, it's good. Your work experience in academia is not really necessary, but it will also give you an upper hand. For instance, if you finish school, you went into banking and you are not thinking of going back to school to pursue a career in academia, it's still okay. your experience will give you an upper hand also over there. So yeah, fresh graduates, you don't necessarily have to be a fresh graduate, I said. Yeah. So moving on to the remaining slides, I'm going to focus solely on my experiences here in Canada. So, and then as I talk, maybe some of my co-presenters might add something from the case of, say, UK, Australia, or US. Yeah. And first thing, when it comes to Canada, the first thing you have to do is to think about the database to get the program you want to study. It's really difficult. There are like hundreds of schools here. So how will you know this school is better for, say, food science, or this school is better for computer science? So I just gathered a list of database here. You can use these databases: Universities Canada, universitystudy.ca, and then the Edu Canada website. Pretty much, it will ask you for, say, the keyword, and then the level of study you want, and then what kind of language. What kind of language? Because Canada has a bilingual system. We have the French Canadians and the English Canadian. I mean, the French Canadians, they are like maybe 2% or 5%, I'm not sure, but they still dominate. So if you're going to study in that part of, say, the country, or maybe you want to do French, so you likely put in like your language, French. And yeah. Moving on, the next slide, what I want to highlight here is when it comes to Canada, we have basically 4 main approaches to fund your studies. Okay, it's a little different in other countries. Maybe it's different from, say, US and the UK and Australia. I don't know much, but it's likely to be also different. And the first, we have like the sponsored schemes, the university levels funding, the federal government funding, and the provincial government's funding. So let me just highlight that the Canadian governance system is, this kind of, we have the federal government. It's not like the Ghana, it's a little bit different from Ghana. So we have the federal government, who's the overall, and then we have like each province or each region, like we have in Ghana, has its own kind of authority or government. So if I say provincial government, that's what I mean by, yeah, the provincial government. So what comes into the sponsored schemes? I would say right now, there are 2 main sponsored schemes. And these schemes are sponsored because they are like sponsored by specific agencies for specific master's programs in specific universities, right? So if you are likely to study a program which is covered under this scheme, there is a plus. You can apply for that particular scholarship. One of the most, the common one is the MasterCard Foundation Scholars Program. I think at the moment, they used to have this program in like 5 universities, but I think their funding is kind of, waving away or something like that. So they have now reduced it to 2 schools, and you need to go to their website and check for the programs that are being covered, and ask yourself, maybe your program might be covered under this scholarship, and then you can apply. There is also African Leaders of Tomorrow Scholarship. This scholarship is also very good. Actually, it runs like a professional development and then a postgraduate program. So you finish the program having an experience with a Canadian company, which is very good. But unfortunately, this year, as I was doing the research for this presentation, I noticed they just wrote something like there will be no intake for 2020. I don't know what's happening, but I mean, if you really mean, if you really want a scholarship, you can keep checking back their website, and then if anything, who knows, they might open it up again. So the second one, which is the university or departmental level funding. Basically, when it comes to Canada, most of the postgraduate programs are funded through this. I would say like 70 to 80% of the students get their funding through this. So what is it? Most universities call it the minimum guarantee funding or the competitive funding. No separate application is required. So if you are applying for a program, in my case, applying for environmental studies program in York University, I just put in my program application, And then at some point, they will ask you, how do you want to fund your studies? Then you have the option to select departmental funding. Then automatically you are being considered for this funding. You don't you need not to do any extra funding application. Okay, so if you are lucky to get the admission, your admission letter will come with detailed funding information. As simple as that. And funding is usually enough. Yeah, it's enough because it covers your tuition fees and the living expenses. In some, it varies per the university, because I know University of Waterloo used to give PhD students, I think 1,005 or 1,450, and then York University gives like 1,008 or something, and some schools do like 1,003, and pretty much it also depends on what you would do. I'll come back to it. That's the next point. So the funding may come as a combination of payment from fellowship, TA-ship, research assistantship, and graduate assistantship. So the fellowship case is what will cover the tuition fees, right? It's automatic. It covers the tuition fee. You don't have to do anything. And the TA-ship, when you are a graduate student here in Canada, you are automatically considered for a job on campus. And these jobs are like teaching assistantship jobs, research assistantship, and graduate assistantship. As you work, you do it 10 hours a week. So as you work, at the end of the month, then they will give you your living expenses. That's how you get your living expenses. I know some guys, especially in summertime, I have some of my colleagues who will do twice the tax. So they will end up getting twice the amounts in the living expenses, right? So for instance, if everybody is getting like 1,800 and they do extra work, they will get like 2,000 plus. But in some terms, in some of the semesters or terms, that we use terms, so let me just use that. In some of the academic terms, you are likely not to even get a TA-ship, because the course you qualify for might not be, running for that term. So in that case, it will be difficult to get a living expense, but the school has a way of compensating you so many ways. They can give you like a tax, which is like an admin work, or they can give you like a marking job. You do it and you get some allowance in your account. So where to get information about the minimum guaranteed funding? Basically, what I would say is go directly to the Faculty of Graduate Studies website. That is the only one of the main place you will see detailed information about the minimum guarantee for graduate students. And some of the program website in my program, Environmental Studies, when I was just doing my research, I went to the program website, and then the detailed funding information was there. So if you're lucky, as you browse through the program website, be on the lookout for funding, right? And you click on funding. Some of the program website might state it categorically. I'll give you an example later. And then one other way to get information about minimum guarantee funding is also look at the faculty members, the professors or the lecturers in Ghana, we call them. Look at their pages or their websites. Some of them have websites of their own, others have pages. Check onto their pages, because some of the professors might advertise that they are looking for a student, right? So if a professor advertises that, oh, I'm looking for a student, and then you email the person and the person gives you a go ahead to apply, that way it gives you a higher chances. It gives you a higher chance, because it's like the person has already factored you into, his or her plans, and he or she might be targeting maybe 2 students, and then in that case, he or she will be reviewing through 10 students to, pick up and see, oh, I've already talked to this student, so let me just consider the person. If you're lucky, yeah, it will work for you that way. And so, yeah, this is a great example. In my case, this is a detailed information from my program website about the guaranteed funding, or competitive funding as they call it. So domestic students, they receive approximately 23,000 per year. That's Canadians and permanent residents. And if you are an international student, you receive 35,600 per year. So this is your minimum guarantee funding. It includes, your tuition fee, your living expenses, and this amount too will come in the form of the TA-ship and everything, as I explained before. And yeah, I talked about professors who might be advertising for students. This is one example. A professor I know in University of Waterloo, she does that all the time. She will just put this on her page and say, oh, you know what, if you're interested, send me your CV and a writing sample, right? So the writing sample here, you can see she did not say academic, article, no. So if you have a blog, you'll be writing about politics in Ghana, food security in Ghana, health in Ghana, you can send her your website and then she can do her own, review of your work and everything. And yeah, some schools might also have like fellowship programs, right? So this is also, it will be on the website, the Faculty of Graduate Studies website. So just look out, either minimum guarantee or graduate fellowship. Either one of it is still the same. Yeah, so there are points 3. The third approach to funding in Canada is the federal government funding. For this one, it's a little different from the other one, the minimum guarantee. Before you can apply to this federal government funding, you have to have had an admission letter, like you have gained admission. And some of the funding will also ask you need to have finished like 1 year of your program. So it just depends, but basically it's the admission that's important. And you have to apply through the departments. You don't just apply to the funding directly, to the funding organization directly, you apply through the department. The reason, because you need a nomination letter, and the nomination letter will be prepared by the department. You also need like a reference letter from your supervisor. So all these things will come from the school. So for instance, if you are, most of the students who get federal government funding, they usually get it like second year or towards the end of first year. But if you're a very good student, you believe in yourself, as soon as you get your admission letter, you can get in touch with the program administrator or the program coordinator, asking him for if there are some federal government scholarship that you can apply. Yeah, and they will still give you information and you can try your luck. By the time you start school, and maybe by the time you finish your first term, the funding the results might be out, and if you're lucky, you can get it. So some examples. So I managed to get 3 examples, I think. Yeah, unfortunately for international students, yeah, these are the 3 examples of federal government funding we qualify for. But I know Canadians and permanent residents, they qualify for a lot of federal government scholarship. I think more than 10 or more than 15. So in our case, there's the Vanier Canada Graduate Scholarship. There is the Pierre Elliott Trudeau Scholarship. There is the IDRC, the International Development Research Fellowship Fieldwork. And again, I just want to emphasize the IDRC scholarship. They might have some scholarships for, say, master's or PhD students who are enrolled in universities in Africa. So, I mean, if you are a master's or PhD student here and you're doing your studies in Ghana, you can check the IDRC website. They might have some funding for you, so you can try your luck. So this is the Vanier scholarship. What it's basically, it's one of the most valuable and then very competitive, I would say. It's like you get 50,000 per year, and then your research definitely needs to be within the health sciences, natural sciences, and or social science. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, you can just check it from the website for detailed information. But yeah, I also need to emphasize, if you are someone with like strong leadership skills, yeah, try it. You are highly likely to get it. And the Trudeau one, for this scholarship is even more than a scholarship. It's like you are connected to a community of, say, top people. And then you also get to travel 3 times in a year to outside Canada to attend leadership training programs. And you also get, on top of your allowance, you also get research allowance. So it's very competitive. And I know this scholarship they give to 17 students throughout Canada. And what I know is that most of the students who get this scholarship end up to be like top people in academia, trust me, even with the Vanier. So for the most of the federal government scholarships, the students end up like top people. Because what happened is, the moment you get this scholarship, it opens a lot of doors for you. So if there is any funding program and you say, oh, you have already had this, they don't even review your application. They'll be like, oh, so far as you've had this one before, you're a good student. And then so moving on, we have like provincial government scholarship. And with a provincial government scholarship too, I'm going to use the classical example of Ontario, the province of Ontario. The province of Ontario has OGS, which is the Ontario Government Graduate Scholarship. And you can also, you know, this one comes in the form of, say, 1 to 3 years. You can have it for 1 year or up to 3 years. And there is also Ontario Trillium Scholarship for 3 to 4 years for PhD. One of the key things we have to note for this one is also that you have to be enrolled. You have to get admission, have started school before you can apply. And you have to be residing in Ontario. So like if you have enrolled on a program which is an online program and you are not in Ontario, you don't qualify for this one. And you need to be like full-time. I didn't add that. So most of the scholarship you have to be full-time. Part-time, there's no scholarship package. Sorry, I have to say that. So yeah. So yesterday I thought I should add this. I just quickly researched and say, oh, let me just add this one. It's usually one of the easiest but unpopular, because people, I believe like most Ghanaians don't really know about this program. But it's not a scholarship, but I see it as the easiest way you can study in Canada. So it's a permanent residency program. You apply, you become a permanent resident. And once you become a permanent resident, there are a whole lot of funding packages for you as a permanent resident. Even there is like OSAP, Ontario Students Loan or something. So with that, they will give you a loan of, say, for your tuition, and they will add something like a living expenses for you. So if your program is 5,000 for a year, they will give you a loan for 5,000. And according to Canadian universities, the living expense for a student for 1 year is up to 15,000. So the government will give you 15,000 free money for your living expenses, but your tuition will be on loan. So if you are thinking about, or maybe I cannot get a scholarship everywhere, but let me try, I cannot get a scholarship everywhere and I cannot find myself in Canada, how can I still get to Canada to have my studies? I will advise you to research onto the Express Entry Program. You write an IELT test, have a band of, say, 7, and then at least have work experience, and then you apply. It might take up to a year or 2. Then you will get your permanent residency. You can get it with your family. If you have a wife and kids, everyone will get it. And then you can immigrate to Canada. Once you get here, you can apply for the federal government education loan, which will only fund your tuition and then give you living expenses for free. So in essence, you only pay back the loan for the tuition, but the living cost is a free grant for you to, you know, if you just want to read more about, know more about this, read it from the government website, or you can, any question you have, I can just address it before we end the program. Yeah. So yeah, Richard just added a few things aside the scholarship, and I was like, okay, let me just touch on to it, not much into details, because these are the CV and statement of purpose. They are the two most important documents when it comes to applying for scholarships. Trust me, if your CV is wrong, there's no way. And if your statement of purpose is not convincing, even if you have the GPA of 4.0, no one will give you scholarship. So CV, how should an academic CV looks like? It should have pretty much like a summary of profile with a summary of, say, research interests, because it is based on your research interest that a professor might know that, oh, okay, this person wants to research into these areas which aligns with my area, right? And you have to list your past education, the school you went to, the degree, the relevant courses. Don't list all the courses, just like 4 or 5 relevant courses, and then the GPA or the class, you graduated with. If you had won some scholarships in the past, especially those, if you're applying for a PhD and you have won some scholarships in the past, please list it here so they can see it. And working experiences, yeah, you have to list them. If you have some kind of, volunteership and leadership experience, being a member of a group, being a volunteering or assisting in a community, even if it doesn't relate to the program you're going to study, just list it. Canadians value volunteership, trust me. Someone might not even have work experience, but just the volunteership experience can get you something. Key publications or like articles you have written, specific areas of your skills. Let's say you have great skills in, say, SPSS or GIS program or anything, you just add it, and then the list of your referees. Okay, so I thought I should add this very important aspect of writing the CV. What I realized is I have done a few CV reviewing for some of my friends, and I mean even my siblings, and there is always like a big problem when it comes to writing the job description. I don't blame them much because I did the same mistakes. I had to attend a career conference, or like I had to go for just sign up for a seminar at the University of Waterloo to get to know much about the CV. So basically what it says is that when you're writing the job description aspect, focus on the skills and achievements, beginning with sentences like I initiated, organized, supervised. And you have to be selective. Sometimes, for instance, if you are a teaching assistant or research assistant, you might be doing a lot of tasks, but most of the tasks are related. So group the tasks and then you can put them into like 3 or 4 bullet points instead of listing a lot. Then you quantify your accomplishments, be specific, you accomplished something. Can you quantify it in terms of numbers, in terms of currency, in terms of percentages? Let's tell the admission committee about what you have achieved, and emphasize on the accomplishments, because you have done something and then it contributed to something. So emphasize on the contribution you achieved, right? And so I just gave an example of my own CV when I started school at the University of Waterloo. This is how I used to write my CV, the one in the blue. So just listing it like, shopping list kind of, and which does not really sound convincing. So after attending the career seminar, I was able to develop something like this. So, I have, by reading this, the reader will see directly how I did something, what I achieved, and what I had contributed to, which is very convincing than just listing it like a shopping list, right? So statement of purpose. In some schools, they will say statement of interest, statement of research, letter of intent. Others will even say supplementary information form, but it's still the statement of interest. So, it's just to provide to provide additional information to the admission committee. And it summarizes personal and academic experiences. Personal experiences, yes, personal. Sometimes there are certain things you wouldn't even tell your friends, but if those things will win you a scholarship, put it there. Put it there. It will definitely help. We have a lot of personal things, like if you are from you have faced a lot of challenges in your life. It could be financial, emotional, it could be, physical, it could be anything. If those things are connected to your application, or it inspired your interest for further studies, put it in there, and it will help the admission committee, to kind of assess your suitability. And yeah, I thought, when you finish writing your statement of purpose, you can ask yourself some of the questions like, why are you interested in the program? Have you answered this question? And then how has your past experiences prepared you for the program of study? And what are the areas of your research interests? And how are they linked, to the program? and maybe like, what are your future aspirations, you know, and how would this program help you? Because remember, the program is going to prepare you for your future, I mean, your career. So you should always address that. And the last point is, you have to, you know, it has to be a good read. I don't have to read it and feel like, oh, the paragraphs are clumpy or something, you know, the words, the grammar. Editing is important. And if you have someone who can help you review it, trust me, send it to them and let them review it for you and give you like genuine comments that will help you. If it's bad, find someone who can tell you. If it's bad, the person will say it's bad. If it's good, the person will say it's good. Because in most cases, we see statements of purposes that are really not good, but we feel shy to tell the person, like, you know what, this is bad. So find someone who can tell you genuinely that this is bad, you can do better, right? So I thought for some schools, I think the statement of purpose is not really general. Most of the schools will give you specific, as in what exactly they want you to write. So this is an example from the University of Waterloo, one of their PhD programs. So in their supplementary information form, they wanted you to, like, if you're an applicant, what they want from you is to outline the main areas of your academic, you know, expertise, the main areas of your research, information about your training, your experiences, what you have accomplished, you know. But basically, at the end of the day, you should also know that, oh, there are key things I have to bring in as per the school's guidelines. So pretty much, this is what I have to say. And yeah, that's all for my presentation. If Della and Bediako has something to add from, say, UK and other country experiences, so that's fine. This is for Canada. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Richard, you are muted.
Okay. Very much, Bill.
Yeah, I think I took too much time, but sorry.
Yeah, I actually appreciate the presentation. Indeed, you actually gave us more than I even expected. The information is very rich, and I'm sure it will help all of us, including me.
Yeah.
If you have anything to add to what she said, maybe in the course of the presentation, there were some things she left out, and then you may also decide to bring your experience, because, Charlie, you have gone through a lot, from Commonwealth to Oxford to now.
Yeah.
And so let's have that aspect of the experience. Della has already joined, and so when you are done, she will also come in with the experience from the US and the UK. Yeah, Kofi, so.
Right, all right, thank you so much. Thank you, so thanks so much for a very comprehensive presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, I wouldn't be adding so much because I think there will be time for questions, and most of the things might be repetitive. So I would just touch on some few things. I would like to talk more about Australian experience and then probably leave UK for Della, because though I have applied to Canada, UK, Finland, and Australia, so quite a huge experience when it comes to the various countries. But I would want to concentrate on Australia. Australian scholarships are basically of three types. You have the government one, and you have the federal government, and then the school-based ones. For federal ones, normally they don't give it to international students. So I'll talk of the two that are most appropriate for those of us from outside the country. So the Australian government one, it's more of a development assistance scholarship. So there is a condition that when you finish school, you would have to go back for at least 2 years. So that is a condition that when you apply, and you need to be aware, and then because you'll be signing a bond that after that you would go back to help your home country for 2 years at least before you would be able to come back to Australia if you want. And you have the school-based ones. What I got, for instance, that is the University of Melbourne Research Scholarship. that does not have any condition of that nature. So, and you could also apply for 2 types of scholarships, either full or partial. Just that for the partial scholarships, unless your family is having their capacity to support you, education here is very expensive. So partial scholarship may not be very, very good for you, but at least it's a start. It gives you some confidence, and at least you get to know that you've also been able to win something. But really what you would want to go for is the full scholarship that will be able to support you throughout your education. And what I would like to say about that is that it's a competition. So you need to know that you have to put in so much effort. I think that is something that I can't emphasize enough. I normally get sad when I check on social media and then there is a scholarship being advertised and you see people write, I am interested, my number, then they write their number under. I'm like, what are you talking about? just clicking on the link and then following instructions and applying. Somebody would write the number there. They should call the person and give you an award that is worth about 2 billion. Who will do that? So please, it is a lot of investment. It's you need to give it a lot of time, your energy and everything. When I was applying for my PhD scholarship, I devoted 1 full month. I mean 1 full month to the application.
Yeah.
Because you are preparing your statement, you are preparing your research proposal, you are preparing your academic writing. And in Australia, I don't think that they would accept regular writing like blog posts as a substitute for academic writing. When they ask you for academic writing, what they need is a fully referenced paper. It's not necessarily a published one, but it must be fully referenced, like you might have submitted it as an essay in class, or you might have written it specifically for the application purpose. So all these things, as you already said, you need to read over and all that. So invest some time in it. I see success getting a scholarship as 3 things: preparation plus opportunity and action. You need to combine these 3 things. So the preparation, you might have, you've gone through your undergrad and all that, so you already have some level of preparation, but you need to add by getting all the materials that you need. Where will you get your references? You need to have contact with some lecturers back at home. Your previous school, you need to build that rapport with them so that when you put in a request, because when it gets to the practicalities, you might be having a very tight schedule, 2 weeks to the deadline, the scholarship deadline, and you contact the person and I'm not able to provide a reference now. And without the reference, your application cannot go through. So that is a very important aspect. You need to contact your lecturers in time and let them know, get their emails. There are some universities that will ask you to just submit the email and then they will contact the lecturer directly. Others would ask you to come in with a pre-prepared reference statement. You can get that one, scan it, and then keep on your laptop or whatever device you use. Once you are applying, you just slot it in. It becomes easy. So the preparation aspect, you need to get all the materials that you need ready and start far ahead. Start ahead of time. Don't wait until it is a week to the deadline and then you start. You wouldn't be able to put in a very good competitive application. Remember, it's open, most of them, especially when it's open to everybody in the world. When it is specific, like let's say this is for Ghana or this is for Africa, maybe the competition is a little bit less intense, but even that, still you would be having thousands of people applying sometimes. So just imagine a competition that you are entering into and there are thousands of applications. How do you stand out? So you need to really polish your work very well. So let me touch on another thing. And sometimes people would ask me, where are the links? How do I get the links to the scholarships and all that? I think in the age of internet, you don't necessarily need somebody to be sending you the links. Just go to Google and then type in scholarship, full scholarship for African students. If you are from Africa, Richard, I guess everybody is from the African continent, right? Or it's so that I know.
Majority.
Okay, well, anyway, all right. Okay, so wherever you are from, just type it in and you would get so many options, and you then shortlist them. I normally would state the deadlines as well so that I know which one comes first, and then I tackle them in that order. Make sure you are giving yourself that mental preparation that you are not just going to put in only one application and then you get it. That is something that I've also come across a lot. Some people would apply one or two and they give up. Those of us, myself for instance, you might have heard that yes, I have won 3 scholarships. I think everybody, all the 3 presenters have that same records. In my case, I think there were others that I decided not to even take at all. But there were others that I also got the usual statement, I am afraid. You know, this basketball said that the white man is never afraid of anything unless they are denying you something. So starting the statement, we are afraid to inform you that your application was unsuccessful. What are you afraid for? Anyway, but that is just on a lighter note. But please, you need to be prepared to get rejection sometimes. That is the bitter truth. You will be rejected sometimes. You might even think that you've polished your work so much, you are so confident that you are winning, and it comes negative. That should never discourage you. Just go in, because at the end of the day, it is the one chance that you win that matters. Once you get one, all other rejections become unnecessary, becomes irrelevant. So please, that is something that I would want to emphasize so much. You spoke about the CV and then the statement of purpose, so I wouldn't touch on that, but I would want to touch on research proposal for the PhD, those who are interested in PhD. For PhD, the research proposal is very, very important. Probably that is the most important aspect of your application, because you are telling the admission team and your supervisors and everybody in the school that this is me, I have identified this problem in society, I would want to solve it this way. And I have this experience that I believe that I'm prepared to solve it. Basically, that is what the research proposal is all about. So you need to prepare that in advance. But what I normally do is, first of all, you need to go to the department website, whichever course that you are interested in. Go to the website, check the list of lecturers. They normally would have the tab people or faculty or maybe staff. You would get the lecturers in that department. Check their research interest and the one whose research interest matches with yours. So for instance, I research in peace and conflict matters, peace, conflict, security. That is the area that I'm interested in. So I'm looking for a lecturer who also researches on peace, conflict, security, and maybe geographical location. Some people are concentrating on Africa, others on Southeast Asia, America, whatever. So you look for these things. Once you get that connection, the next thing is you email that lecturer. You know, they would always have their emails there. So you email the lecturer with a topic. So by the time you are contacting the person, you already have that. I am so-and-so, I have this experience, and I would want to come and do research in your school. And I realized that your research interest matches with mine. So I would want to see if you would be interested in supervising my work. So if the person is interested, then they would reply, submit your proposal for me, and you do that. they might ask you to make corrections or tell you, okay, and then you go ahead and apply. So when you do that, by the time you are applying, you are going to then state with authority that I've contacted Professor this, who has already agreed to supervise my work. Another thing you could do, which would help you, is to read a little bit about the lecturer's publication. You might get some of the articles and then read. So in your statement, you could indicate, I read the person's work, the person argues that this. I believe that that argument would fit into my research work. I might want to even change it this way. These are the things that the admission team, they look for. Mm-hmm. I always consider my application as a boxing, okay, just a metaphor, a boxing match that I am encountering. So you need to give them the punches. And some of the punches are those that I'm mentioning. Touch on your supervisor's work. Whoever you have taken as your supervisor, touch on their work, mention some of the arguments that they've made. How are you going to use that argument in your research? And it tells the admission team that you are very serious, you've already researched, you are ready for the course. Okay, so your research proposal is very, very important at the PhD level. Here in Melbourne, you don't necessarily need to have a publication, but when you have it, it's an added advantage, as like Bilkisu already said. But they would also take something like conference presentations. So if you have been to a conference, not just an attendee, but you presented a paper, you state that, and they would value it almost like a publication. Okay, so I think I would just pause here and give Dela the chance to come in, and probably during the question and answer session, I would have some other stuff to add. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kofi, for that. I think that you made one striking point, and something that maybe you may have to organize another meeting to actually talk about in its whole insight about the attitude of some of our friends and some of our about seeing a scholarship and even wanting that, being posted is the one providing you with the necessary information. I mean, like you mentioned, we are in an information age. As much as we are trying possible to share opportunity with people, I personally think that people should be able to take the extra mile to look for opportunities. I mean, people should be hungry for opportunities. Yeah. And I'll example. Somebody consulted me wanting a scholarship to study in the UK. Fortunately, I went to search and found a scholarship and sent to the person, a school specific. And indeed, this school is actually ranking 3rd in the UK in QS ranking and all that. The person has earlier applied to a lower school. He gained admission but couldn't get funding. Now, when I sent the link to the person, the first question the person asked me was that, is the school a good school? That was the first question he asked me. And to date, I did not answer the first question because I felt that in the first place, you should have even gone to the school's website to check. You could even check about the school. And this is 21st century. So having shared opportunity with you and coming back to asking me whether it's a good school, I felt that you are not actually interested enough for the opportunity I'm trying to share. So I think you made some very important point there. I would want to go to Bella to also bring guests because she also has some experience from the US, transited to the UK. Because indeed, she has won one of the most competitive and the most prestigious scholarships. The Gates Cambridge Scholarship is actually eyed by a lot of people. So Della, kindly share with us, before we even go to take participant questions, I mean, something brief, a general overview of what you think people should expect in putting in some of these applications, as Kofi did.
Thank you so much. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I missed part of Balikisu's presentation, but I heard everything that Kofi said. So maybe in talking, I may repeat some points without being aware.
That's okay.
Yeah, so as you already said, most of my experience has been in the US, but I have some experience that I could use to compare because I'm just about to enter the UK system. So let's say I've sort of gone through some of the UK drilling. I think I'll try to talk about those parts of the things that we don't usually talk about. They are more or less like behind the scene things that students are supposed to know. So of course, as Kofi said, and I'm sure Balikisu must have also mentioned it, there is no shortcut when it comes to getting a scholarship. Like, the work is not even in a month or in a year. The work that is going to get you a scholarship must start probably 10 years before you are getting that scholarship. Like, for example, when you are doing your first degree, you must make sure that whatever you are doing, you are getting a GPA that one day, if you want to apply for scholarship, the GPA will put you somewhere good. For the US, to even get a basic admission, you need something around 3.0 and above. Usually, if you have 3.5, it's going to put you ahead of the average student. But the moment you don't have 3.0, it already puts you at a disadvantage. I know some of us went to universities that they don't use 3.0. So right now, when I say 3.0, I'm using something that the US system uses, and University of Ghana also uses the same thing. So maybe the moderator will help with the conversion for the rest of us. So my first point is that the work that is going to get you a scholarship must start many, many years before your application. For example, Kofi mentioned conferences and publications. Before I got the Gates Cambridge Scholarship, I don't have any formal publication. But what I have are essays that I've written over the years and presentations that I've done in places like the UN. So those things in your statement of purpose set you apart. So I think that should move me to my second point. I think one of the most important things when you are competing against thousands of people is your story. Like, what is your story? What sets you apart from the thousands of people that you are competing against? So here, for example, you are applying to a scholarship that probably receives, and most scholarships are actually like that, right? They are getting application from straight A students from all over the world, from Asia, from Europe, from America, from Africa. And you want to be one of the very few people that they give money to go do your research, right? You must be able to tell the people who are looking at the scholarship application what sets you apart from the rest of the people. And personally, I realized that a story, something that makes you unique, really works. For example, if they put you against the next person, what can you give your community that the next person may not be able to give, right? What in your experience has prepared you most for the scholarship you want? So a story is extremely important in my view. Kofi said he will leave the US and the UK for me. So maybe I should jump to some of the differences that I've noticed between the two systems. So I realized that in the US, when you're applying to schools, most scholarships are directly connected to the school. In fact, your application, you don't need to do a separate application to get a scholarship for most US schools. So when you're applying, you just like get maybe money to go to school as part of the application process. I saw from my experience of applying to US schools that they consider you automatically for scholarship for a lot of schools, right? But I saw that in the UK system, there is the perception that you have to get a scholarship from a separate entity usually. Of course, some of the schools have scholarships, right? But then the major difference is the way a US school automatically consider you. I see that most the UK system isn't necessarily like that. So, and then another difference that you may want to take note of is that in the US, actually I'm here to come across a scholarship that differentiates between citizens and foreigners. Like when we come talking about my own experience and talking to colleagues, when we come to school, there's no difference between foreigner and an insider who gets the scholarship money or who gets assistantship. Assistantship is usually what we do, for example, teaching, and then we get some small money in return to like pay our rent, buy food, etc. And then scholarship usually handle our school fees and other bills that maybe we have to pay while in school. So that is another major difference. Now, another thing you may want to take note of comparing the US and the UK system. I see that what Kofi said about reaching out to a professor, it is extremely important in the US system. Like, if you have somebody to speak on your behalf behind closed doors, it really helps. And how to get that person is, like Kofi said, you have searched for them, and then you've noticed that you have a similar interest with them, and they'll be a good mentor for you. And you contacted them, explained yourself, and then they contacted you back and said, yeah, we are good to go. We would like to be part of your work. We want to supervise you. That is how you get in touch with those people. So the US system, it is extremely important to have someone behind the scene. Of course, in the UK system too, I think from my experience of applying, it is also important. But for example, when I was applying to Cambridge, one rule they had was that I cannot contact a professor before I start the application. So I couldn't contact any professor before I started my application. But when I started, and then I was put in touch with the professor that I mentioned in my proposal, that's who I would like to work with, then I was put in touch with her. From there, the relationship started. And just like the US system, who you have speaking on your behalf is super important. Like if your potential supervisor likes you, then I feel like you've done like 40% of the job already. Because if she puts in her word, she says, I am willing to supervise this person's work, I think she's good enough, then you've done almost 40% of the job already. But then if you are just coming out, pardon?
Oh, no, I was just saying very true. Go ahead, sorry.
Okay. But if you are just coming out of the blue, you don't have anybody behind the scenes talking for you. Of course, sometimes you still make it, but usually having someone at the other side is super important. Balikisu already talked about SOP. So the only thing I'll add, looking at the UK and the US system, is that in the UK, they emphasize proposals. So for example, I had to write more than 20-page proposal for the Cambridge application. But in the US system, I haven't seen a school that has asked that we write proposal. They don't expect proposal from you, like what I'm saying, like 20-page paper. No. What they do is that your most important material when it comes to telling them about yourself, what makes you unique, is your SOP. And I'm sure Balikisu talked about it, and even Kofi touched on it, that is where you tell them what makes you unique. What is your story? Not your GPA. As for your GPA, they've already looked at it. So I see that's the difference. In the UK system, you want to pay attention to your proposal, especially if you are going for a PhD, your proposal is super. Let me tell you something. I wrote my proposal about, I think about 1 month, 1 year, 6 months before my application. And a few weeks before the application, I still polished it up. So like Kofi said, oh, you have to do the road job. There is no way you do shortcut. You have to be super prepared, because your intention is that you are fully aware that you are competing against so many awesome people and you want to be picked. So wanting to be picked means you have to do the extra work, like more than maybe the average person would do. What else do I want to talk about? Okay, Kofi touched on how to get access to scholarships. So I'll just add to what Kofi said. I think one of the best ways to get access to scholarship and the link how to get there is number one, for me, you need to decide on what you want to do, right? For example, you have a field. So you have a field. Maybe you want to be in political science. Now, the next thing is, which part of political science do you want to be? Like, what is the problem that you want to have, right? And before you get to deciding that, another secret that really works is compare your research ideas, like students are looking at. What are their current students researching? Then after you look at that, the topic that you have decided on, or the area that you have decided on, you compare it, right? You compare it to see how does it look against them. Is it good enough or is not good enough? Are you going to repeat a research that somebody has already done? And if you see that somebody is already doing that research in that department, don't send the same proposal, because there's the likelihood that they are not going to pick you, because already the funds, the space and the money is so small. So there's the likelihood that they are not going to duplicate research topics, right? They will like something unique. So if you decide on your topic, your area, and you go compare it to other people's own on the website, then you know whether you are in good shape or you need to make some changes. So I think that is also important. And then another way to get links is to, like Kofi said, Google. These days we have our phone, right? Right now I'm actually using my phone. We have our phones in our hands 24/7. But then usually what do? We browse about unnecessary things. Facebook 24/7. I'm very guilty. So if your intention is to get into a good school or get good money for yourself, then just dedicate a few hours of that full time or screen time to searching for scholarships in your field. And then a third way to get scholarships, your professors. Your professors really know the way. Like, they've gone through the system, they have looked at your work, they know where you are likely to qualify for and where you are likely not to qualify. And sometimes they actually talk to each other. They can put in word for you. So making your professor your friend is super important. Of course, maybe you can't be friends to every professor, it's not. But I mean, having a mentor in the academic field really helps. Like, one thing that helped me even before I came to do my master's was I had people who were in academia, who used to read my work. They will tell me, okay, I think you should apply for this. You should do it this way. And then another thing, even if not professors, you need, how should I say? You need like friends who are a little bit above you. I don't know how to put it. For example, if your intention is to do a PhD, you should make PhD friends, because what it does for you is that you have somebody to look at your work. You have somebody to direct you on friendship level. So for example, you come to, if Kofi is my friend, and I know Kofi is doing his PhD here, and then I also have my eyes on the same thing, right? I want the kind of money Kofi has. I am going to make Kofi my friend. So once in a blue moon, I'll check on him. I will tell him that, hey, I wrote this SOP. Could you please read it for me? What do you think? And if Kofi thinks I have potential and he has the time, he's going to assist me. So it is super, super important. You have to make friends that are like where you want to be. Not necessarily, but I'm hoping that you get my point. So I think I'm going to stop here. My 3-point preparedness, Balikiso and Kofi talked about it, so I didn't touch on it. So you have to be prepared. Then who you know or who knows you, right? Who knows your work? Who knows how good you can write? Like they look at your work and they say you are a good student, you are an excellent student. Who are you making sure that people see your work? So who is behind you, like on the application panel? Is your supervisor somebody putting in word for you? Does she believe you are, like, you really need somebody like that? So being prepared, like from the day you step in level-handed, and then who you know, right? And then number 3, your story. What makes you different from every other person who wants that money? Thank you so much.
I see. Interesting. Thanks for another wonderful presentation. I will start from where you ended about who knows you. I think these days, who knows you is also very important. Earlier, we used to talk about whether you know the person. These days, if you know the person as to whether the person also knows you, it's very important. I think that you've made such a great point there. But then, Albert, I don't know if you may want to add something before we go to the participants.
I think that the quick one is that we're also looking at grants. Apart from the direct scholarships, sometimes it's not a scholarship advertised by a funding agency or a school, but it's a grant that you're already in the school. You want to tap into certain grants that are available for research in your field. I don't know whether any of our panelists want to say something about that before we take questions. Or else too, we can.
Yeah, I think, I don't know.
Okay.
I think, first of all, let me just add one more thing to what Della said regarding the proposals. Yeah, so when it comes to the UK for PhD, proposals are very important. And then the UK guys, they have like this lengthy proposals. You can write into many pages. That's what they want. But for Canada, most of the schools, you don't need a proposal. What they will ask you is a statement of research, and they will specify that it has to be no more than 2 pages, right? So the statement of research is like, it's a proposal cum statement of purpose. So you are writing a personal thing, but you're also telling them what exactly you want to do in the PhD, and then how you would want to do it. They want to see a bit of, you know, the background, the literature, the methodology, like you have knowledge of it. You know, put all that into like 2 pages. And then because the Canadians, they believe like PhD, it shouldn't be like 2-3 years, like UK is 3 years. I don't know Australia. Here is 4 to 6 years. So when you come, they give you the gap to research broadly, right? So you don't bring your proposal and start with the proposal. If you have the proposal, you come, you start with it, fine. But if you don't have it, they will prepare you through the proposal stage. And along the line, like if you are a family, that's one thing I have to emphasize. If you are a family, especially for us women, please don't let you being a mother or a woman or whatever prevent you. Canada, you can come as a mother of 3, 4, 5. And then along the line, if things get difficult, you can take a leave of absence, 2 years, a year, and come back to the program. It is really allowed and they encourage it. Okay. And one last thing is about, let's say, the preparedness, as they all said, is very important. You have to start ahead of time, and that's the best way to go out. And you have to do as many applications as possible. In my case for masters, I think I did more than 15 applications. Yes, more than 15. And I have like 3 or something. So do as many as you can. And the grants, Albert mentioned about the grants. Back to my presentation, in Canada, IDRC is the #1 point for grants. If you are international student, if you are in Canada or you're outside of Canada. check the IDRC website.
Okay. Thank you very much, Bill, for that addition. I would go straight to start taking questions from participants, just so that.
Richard, I think Kofi wanted to make a point.
Sorry about
that.
Well, that's all right. I just wanted to say that yes, for grants, there are two things. It could be that you are not in any university, but you are with, let's say, a bank or whatever employment that you are in, and you have a research that you would want to get funding for. It's possible to get a grant in that way. Or you are already in school and you want to apply to a grant. That is also possible. But the difference here is that you are not applying for admission. This one is specifically for the funding for your research. So the difference here is that you are concentrating on your proposal and your CV to convince them that, yes, this is a research that you have, which is very important. You have seen a problem that you would want to solve and help society. So they would want to, if they want to support you. So in that case, definitely you would want to look at a grant institution that is interested in your area of research. So there are, I wouldn't be able to mention specifically any, but when you search on the internet, you'll be able to get a list of such institutions that tackle specific areas. Let's say feminist issues in Africa, for instance, or conflict stuff in Africa, anything like that. There are specific institutions that do that. And then normally what you need to do is they would list the things that they would want from you. So it's a matter of taking your time to read their instructions and then working your application according to how they want their things. And basically, yeah, that's what I want to say for now. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Kofi, for that addition. Joseph Kusi Yanchara, you've raised your hand for a very long time. Please ask your question. I've already unmuted you, so go ahead.
Is he talking?
Joseph Kusi Yanchara.
Can you check from his profile?
Yeah, okay. If he's not available, let's go to Na.
Type, right?
Na Emmanuel.
Okay. Thank you very much, Balikisu and Kofi and Amalia for the presentation. It's very good, and I think it's really educative. My question is, it looks like the things you spoke about was more of PhD rather than masters. So what of those of us fresh graduates who just completed our undergrads and we want to venture into our masters? What do we also do? And some of us may specifically have applied to about more than 15 schools, like Balikisu said. I've applied to more than 15 schools and I've gained admission to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, about 10 schools. And none of them is giving me funding. No scholarships. Yes. none of them is giving me funding.
UK, right?
UK, US. I've had 4 schools from US, about 5 schools from UK, 1 school from Netherlands, and it is quite frustrating. At a point, I felt like giving up because September plus this COVID-19 issues. So I don't know how best can I don't know whether I can still push for scholarship applications because it looks like they've all closed. And then though we have the admissions, no scholarships, no funding, I don't know what I'm doing. And some of them too need bank statement. And to be frank, where to get a bank statement is very difficult. It's very, very difficult. So in that case, what do you suggest the person should do?
Okay. Nah, thank you very much. Because you mentioned specifically, I would want people with area-specific experience to tackle your question for you. But then I want to say something more about the UK Masters.
All right.
I think that Della mentioned it in her presentation, and Bill also tried to distinguish between the scholarship around those two places. This is what I can tell you about the UK. You see, the UK have standard scholarship that are open at the beginning of the academic year or even in the middle of the academic year. Scholarship like the Chevening Scholarship, the Commonwealth Scholarship, Commonwealth Shared Scholarship. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Agencies of the UK that comes out with scholarship. And so if you want to study a master's in the UK, then you have to be looking out for the openings of these scholarships. You apply to the scholarship, they tell you that you apply to the school. So you like this, that you have admission. If you had applied to maybe Chevening or maybe Commonwealth and all that, they are all difficult and all that. I know, for instance, in 2019, Chevening, for instance, awarded 21 Ghanaians.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great.
Have a good story.
That's great.
Be one of them.
Mm-hmm.
If Chevening is not able to take you, Commonwealth will take you.
Commonwealth.
If Commonwealth doesn't take you,
World Bank.
World Bank will take you.
World Bank has one.
World Bank.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Even there was also MasterCard Foundation.
Oh yeah, MasterCard, Edinburgh.
Yeah. So what you have to know is that a lot, if you apply to UK to the school thinking that you gain scholarship, they know that you apply to pay money, and you have to know that the UK, for instance, gets a lot of its funds from international students. People come. So, I mean, some schools also have specific research that you can apply for. And so if you are applying to a school, a website, they have specific grants that you can apply for. Other than that, a lot of them will tell you that they will give you 10% waive, 5% waive, and even if they give you 90% waive, some of us, we cannot pay the 10%. Because 10% alone could fund somebody for about 3 years or 5 years in countries like Ghana. Is that okay? That is a bit of UK Masters, and you have to know that. I don't know if Bill would want to add something before we go to Kofi.
Yeah, because you know when he met, he was saying 15s and then 15 school admissions, and then I knew it's UK. Yeah. It's for UK, and then UK, I think even UK scholarship application, it needs a full section, trust me. Because what happened is that if you're applying to schools in the UK, a lot of people have made a lot of mistakes. Most of my colleagues, I have to sit them down and then tell them. And I also could have made a lot of mistakes, but I had, as Della said, I had mentors. I had seniors I was keeping in touch with, and you know, always asking them specific information. It really helps. Connect yourself with those who are already in the system. For the UK, you first have to check the Commonwealth. Look into the Commonwealth, the schools, because Commonwealth is not for every school. It doesn't operate in every school. Check to make sure which schools are under the Commonwealth Scholarship, and then which programs are being offered under the Commonwealth Scholarship. So if you're a political science student, you might have an interest in gender, or you might have an interest in trade. You might have an interest in, say, anything that is linked to law. So read the program to see, oh, which of these programs are linked to the aspect of political science I am into. Then you apply to that program in that school. So you have a mark for Commonwealth. In the past, what I always tell students is capitalize on the Commonwealth and Chevening. Most of them, they have the same program, the same universities. So if you go and read about the Commonwealth and you take like 5 schools under the Commonwealth, you come to Chevening and then you look through the Chevening to make sure if these programs are already under the Chevening. In this case, you are strengthening your application. So you are applying to one school, but if you don't get the Chevening, they might consider you for the Commonwealth, right? And there's also MasterCard Foundation for University of Edinburgh and a few schools. You check these schools before you do it, you apply. So that exists for the UK. In Canada, whatever I said in my presentation is basically for both masters and PhD. So you mentioned about most of the, whatever we were saying, it's in Canada, whatever I said in my presentation here is for both masters and then PhD. Departmental scholarships are there for master students, they are there for PhD students. As Bediako and Della mentioned, you can reach out to professors if you're going to do PhD. The same thing applies if you're going to do masters. In fact, for the masters, some of the schools will specify that get in touch with a professor before you apply. If you don't get a confirmation from a professor, don't apply. So I always tell my friends, make sure this information you have read it, because if you don't get in touch, if they say you should get in touch with a professor and you do not, then you go in and submit your application, you pay your application fees, $100, $150. It's a lot of money in Ghana.
Yeah, sure.
And Canada, what they do is, at the end of as soon as the application deadline ends, they will kind of put together all the files, the number of the thousands of students who have applied. Then the graduate faculty of graduate studies will sieve it, will do the first sieving, the first, the GPA and everything, you reach the point, then they forward it to the department. When it comes to the department, that is where your destiny starts. Most of they will share it to the professors. Each professor will pick like 10 students, 10 students, 10 students. They will share it accordingly. And most of the professors, they don't have time. They are already earning big money in funding and they are giving their research. So if you had already contacted the person will just pick your application straight and review it. Exactly. So if you hadn't contacted the person, they would just say, oh, I have reviewed it. No, not to be considered. Because they don't have, that's how it works in Canada. I didn't know until I became a PhD student. And as a PhD student, when you get to like third year, you can join some committees, you can be on an admission committee. So I was talking to one of the students who had that opportunity because she's in final year and she's an international student. She had the opportunity to be on the admission committee and she was telling me some of this experience. And I was saying, it's so wrong, considering how much experience time we put into it. And the professor will be like, oh, because you did not contact me, come on, go away. I'll look at it. I mean, it's okay, but that's it. And if you don't know, you will just make the mistakes and go away. So just to keep my talk short.
All right, Kofi, can we hear from you? As for you, you have quite a number of experience of particularly in the UK.
Yeah. Well, Emmanuel, I think what I would say is when you are applying, what you need to do is to look for what the department's website says about funding. Okay. Yes, okay. Because if you just put in the admission, as Richard said, they think you are coming to give them money, so they will give you the admission very quick.
All right. Okay.
Okay. So if you are interested in the scholarship, which is what most of us are interested in, the first thing you need to look at is under their funding, they will state maybe this program has the following scholarships available. Then you go and check the scholarship and what they expect you to do to be able to get a scholarship. Some will tell you that this program, you will be automatically considered for a scholarship.
Scholarship, okay.
Yes, if there is that statement there, then you could be rest assured that you would be considered. Even that, it doesn't mean that it's automatic you are going to get it. So exactly. So you still need to look for other options apart from the one that you will be automatically considered. For instance, the University of Oxford, they will tell you that they have about 1,000 scholarships, and that 2/3 of these are automatic consideration. Okay. So so the moment you put in your application, it's once you meet the standard that they want, then they would peg you against other students in competition for the scholarships available. But it may happen that you wouldn't get it. So what backup measures did you take yourself?
Okay.
If you don't, okay, yeah, you want to come in first, yeah? You come in.
I thought you were asking me a question. That what backup method did I?
Oh no, I'm only, it's a rhetorical.
Right.
I just
Okay.
Yeah. So that is something you need to always look out for. Don't just put in the admission and then think that the university is going to give me admission plus scholarship. It doesn't, unless they state that there is automatic consideration. Even in the case of automatic consideration, as I said earlier, you still need to have backup measures.
Yeah, sure. I think it happened. It happened to me with two schools, New Mexico State and University of Ohio. They gave me the admission, and later they said they were sorry they couldn't offer any funding. They couldn't give any funding. Yes. So maybe we should consider applying next year or something like that.
Yeah. Let me just quickly add the second part of your question about
the bank statement.
Bank statement.
Yes.
With the UK, for instance, if you've not had a scholarship, then definitely you would need to demonstrate that you have enough funds to support yourself. Okay. So so once you have, if you get a full scholarship, then a bank statement is irrelevant. But if you get something like, let's say, partial scholarship, then you will still need to have a bank statement to support. People have ways of going around it, but it's not very helpful.
All right.
Some people think that once they get to the UK, they will be able to get a job and then support themselves quickly. It's not true. Yes, you might end up being in a very, very deep trouble. So the best is the best is try as much as you can and get the full scholarship, and you are safe, because the academic work is so intense. It's so intense that if you might lose out, especially yourself going into masters. If it is a PhD, fine, maybe you can pull yourself through. But if it is masters, you are going to you want to get a distinction at the end of the day to use that and get a PhD if you want to move on. So if you went in with a partial scholarship and you concentrated on work, then your graduating record is not going to be good. You might not get even merit. And once that happens, then you've kicked yourself out of further application for a PhD. Good. Yeah. So bank statement, yes, some would want to try and go with it and work alongside. If it depends on what you want out of your travel. Okay. It's not everybody who would want to move on into a PhD. Others just want to get there and then probably apply for other immigration status options that it may come with. So it depends on basically why you would want to go to whichever country that you are applying to. And let me distinguish this thing about master's applications. We have two types of master's applications. We have the coursework masters, and we have masters by research or MPhil. Okay, good. So if you are straight from undergrad and you want to apply for masters, you need to decide which of these two options you would want to. Both of them would qualify you for PhD. But just that masters by research gives you an upper hand if you want to move on to PhD. Some can even just convert their master's research. If it was mastered by research, they just convert PhD. Or some, if you are a very good student, they will just allow you to add some few 2 years and then get a PhD. So masters by research, MPhil, good in that aspect if you want to progress. But if you are interested in just getting a qualification and probably looking for a job, then maybe coursework is fine. And the difference here is that the application system, the masters by coursework is relatively easier. Relatively, it's not easy, but just compared to masters by research, good. So with the masters by coursework, all you need is your statement of purpose and your academic record, and then your CV. Good. But with masters by research, it's almost like a PhD. So in UK or Australia here, you would need to have a proposal in place. You need to have just that, and then a writing sample as well. And you must have contacted a supervisor, as we've already said. Okay, so that is the difference with applying for either MPhil or masters by research as one category, and then masters by coursework.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much, Kofi, for.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
But still be there. I would go, like you mentioned, indeed, I have also personally noticed the difference between a master's application in the US and the PhD application in the US. And so I want Della to also come in with the actual thing concerning master's scholarship in the US. That appears is not the same. And I realized that it's also not automatic as compared to the PhD. So Della, because you have had some master's scholarship in the US, can you share with us what actually the whole procedure is about?
Of course, it is true that because the US system depends highly on graduate students teaching, on the average, PhD student will be a better teacher compared to a master's, at least on paper, right? So it looks as if the schools are more willing to sponsor PhD compared to masters. And then another thing is that PhD places are fewer compared to masters. Usually the masters is more and then the PhD is few. So this means that when you want a master's scholarship, it's more competitive. Now, one thing I saw in the US system is there are certain courses that you almost never get scholarship for. And those courses are usually courses that are perceived as if they don't have direct contribution to society. They are more about profession, making money. So for example, if you are going for business administration, you are going for law, sometimes nursing, and these three things I mentioned, and then the part of them you are going for is also not research. It's more or less like Kofi mentioned, coursework. You are more likely not to be giving money. Yeah. But if your work is research and then is in a field that they perceive as having direct link to contributing to society, they are more likely to sponsor you. So one thing you may want to look at is what you are applying to. I have no idea, but for example, if you are applying for law in the US, then you shouldn't really be expecting scholarship because most schools almost never give scholarship to law students or anything like that. Yeah. And then another something I would like, is it Emmanuel?
Yeah, nah.
Yeah, something I would like Emmanuel to take note of. I hear you mention schools like Ohio State University. Schools like that, I don't know how to say this. Schools like that put you in some kind of disadvantage sometimes. People don't usually say this, right? But what I can tell you on maybe an unofficial level is sometimes it is better to go to schools that doesn't have the big name. But when you go, they have the same capacity. They have good libraries, good professors, just that they don't have the big name. So a lot of students don't crowd towards them, right? Like I went to a school called BGSU. That is not a school that so many Ghanaians know or anything like that. When I go to conferences, I usually have to do the extra work of explaining where the school is located and all that. Yeah, but I think it has the advantage of, for example, comparing my school is located in Ohio, comparing that school to OSU, I feel like it would be a bit easier to get to my school because one thing is that schools like OSU, they are name source and then they also have the capacity to advertise, to be known in so many countries. But schools like my school, they don't have the capacity to do that huge advertisement, and they definitely don't have the giant name carrying them, right? And I see that those schools usually have to send out people to look for students. They have to send out to look for students. Yes.
Yeah,
so
they have ambassadors.
Yes. If your intention is to get scholarship, the money plus the application, then you should start considering smaller schools. That is something that I wanted to. And then another thing, don't think getting 10 schools. Well, maybe I'm about to shoot the UK people in the foot. I feel like the UK people giving money is very difficult. They give more ambition.
Yes.
So,
they want you to come and give them money.
We will
yeah,
not.
seriously. So maybe, yeah,
Everybody
maybe,
has purpose.
yeah, maybe you should start concentrating on American, Canadian sort of side. Yeah, and maybe you should, yeah, you should
Australia
leave
gives
it.
money a lot as well.
Okay,
Australian
yeah.
university, yes,
Okay,
Australian
yeah.
universities,
So yeah,
and
so
New Zealand.
concentrate on those things. Yeah, yeah. Concentrate on the places that you know they are more likely to give you money, and maybe you should leave the UK system. That way, your energy will be focused. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. You see, like I mentioned, for me, that's why I was telling Nah, in the UK, it's either you are targeting the traditional scholarship, and it is very competitive. This year, I had a course of consoling a lot of people. Imagine the number of applicants for Children alone. I remember in 2019, Children offered about 3.2% of those that applied. They had application from about 56,000 people, 65 countries, and they admitted only 1,750 people from 165 countries. Yeah. So that is why, like Ghana, you can imagine about 3,000 applications might have come from Ghana, yet only 21 people were admitted into the scholarship. And so, like Dela mentioned, you have to spread your tentacles. Indeed, for US scholarship, you see, most people don't know this. Please, you can get every information you want about US schools and scholarship at the public affairs section of the US Embassy. So when the COVID lockdown is over, please go to their website. There are even weekly seminars they do for people who want to study in the US for masters, bachelors, and then PhD. You will get a lot of information about that. Thank you. There was this question, I think that is directly for Bill. So Bill, you may have to answer that one quick for me, and then we'll proceed to take more questions from participants. Someone wants to know the transition from moving from UK to Canada. I think he has also studied in the UK, a master's, and he's gained admission to go and study in Canada. He wants to know your experience of the two systems, the Canadian educational system, what your thought is about.
Okay, I'll say it depends on the program, right? So for that person, I don't know what particular program he or she is in.
In education.
Yeah. So yeah, in education is a good area here in Canada. They have jobs, and so if you come to do education program here, you are highly likely to get a job right after school. Okay. Compared to the US, I know there are a whole lot of certifications you might have to do in addition to that. Yes. But so when it comes to, say, the teaching and learning environment here in Canada, what I found is that, you know, UK has been a century-old, if I may put it, country. And then we are so much used to UK. You know, our accent is UK, our writing is in UK. And for me, I always tell people, when I was in the UK, I felt like I was in the center of the world. Why? Because I see people from everywhere. And then even in classroom, trust me, my class, we only had 2 British citizens, 2 like British. All other people were from like Bangladesh, Myanmar, India, Cambodia, Vietnam, you know, Africa, across Africa, Zimbabwe, Kenya. So we get to share our experience, and I liked it because my background is international development, and definitely international development, I want to know about everybody, right? But coming to Canada here, what I realized is that Canada is now beginning to open up more. So it is now that people are coming to Canada. So you really have, the diversity is there, but not as UK. And also when it comes to international development, the thematic focus of the Canadian supervisors are a little more limited. It's not as wide as the UK professors. For instance, most of the professors here, they prefer to do like gender, you know, maybe population, health, these key big thematic, you know, issues. But in the UK, you have professors going specific into, say, rural livelihoods, agricultural livelihoods, poverty. You know, they go into the nitty-gritties, they go much into the details. And the professors here in Canada, they are, when it comes to their work in developing countries, they are highly likely to focus on Latin America. So like they go to Peru, they go to say Colombia, the other countries, maybe Haiti, Haiti, and then other Jamaica, they do their work there. They don't really, just a few, maybe 1 out of 10 will do work in Africa. And then for those who do work in Africa, it's like once in a blue moon. They will have a project today and it will be like the next 10 years. So when it comes to, you know, all these things, I think I enjoyed the classroom in UK than here. Basically, that's what I would say.
All right. Thank you very much for that experience. I will go to some of the questions so that we will take some participants to ask their questions. There was this man who wants to ask questions. Bafo Boateng, please, if you are available, you can ask your question.
Hey, I want to say. Okay.
Thank you very much. Please, my question is simple. You know, other institutions or other grant firms request that you do some proficiency, you know, programs. So are there other schools that do not even request that you do either TOEFL or these proficiency programs available also in UK, US, and Canada and those areas? Thank you.
Kofi Diakon, you can take that question from me.
Yeah. Right.
Why direct?
I'm the moderator.
I hear that.
IELTS, TOEFL, and the like. There are a lot of universities that wouldn't request that from Ghanaian students. Okay, so normally when you are applying, go to their language qualification tab and read the instructions. They would normally tell you that if your first language is not English, you are required to write so and so and so and so, and then they will add, unless you have attended a university where English language was the language of instruction and assessment, which Ghana qualifies you automatically. And then there are others that would insist that whether you went to school in Ghana or whatever, you would still need to demonstrate your English ability by producing a test. Okay, so there are a lot. Australia here, for instance, most of the schools would not request that from a Ghanaian student. The UK, it's 50-50. There are some schools, my first school, for instance, I had to write IELTS. The second time going, interestingly, Oxford being higher, they didn't request that. But I think Oxford considered I had already studied in the UK. Okay, but there are others who also came straight to Oxford without writing any English test. So the Oxford would normally ask you to give them reasons why they should waive the requirement for you. Okay, so you would write an exemption letter indicating that you've studied in Ghana, you have this experience with using English as part of your education. The interesting thing is that one of the things they look for is how you construct that defense. It's just a short piece, but they can use how you write that one to disqualify you or accept you, because that you are telling them that because of this, I know my English is good, so take me. So if you make mistakes on that, just about 500 words, then you shoot yourself in the foot. Okay, so they give you that opportunity as a trap. So when you are writing it, you make sure you polish it very well. Give it to people to read. We used to call it chiseling. Okay, you need somebody to chisel you. Some people will give you very nasty comments, if you like, for want of a better word. You don't need to be angry. That is academia for you. In the field of academics, critique is the key word. Yes, let people critique you. Let people criticize your work. It is bad this way. It looks bad this way. Take it in good faith, polish it, and then give it back again. So when you do it back and forth like that, then you'll be able to go through. So always look for what this particular university you are applying to is saying. What qualifies you under the language qualification that they want. Okay. All right. I hope I answered your question. Okay.
Yes, thank you very much.
I want to add to what Kofi said.
Okay.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah. In the US system, something similar to what Kofi said happens. There are so many schools that would not expect English exam from a Ghanaian student. And I know schools like Legon, they have an academic writing center where you go and take a letter that you add to your application documents to show that you actually studied for 4 years in English. So they will sort of waive, even if the school has that, they are demanding for those exams, they will waive it for you when you provide that document. I don't know if the other schools have the same. Maybe the moderator can tell us. Yeah. And then, yeah, another thing is that in the US system, away from the English exams, GRE, they almost always ask you for GRE. There's no two ways about that. You can be so smart and you submit an application. And for example, when I was applying, I applied to Harvard. Even though Harvard doesn't have gender studies, they have African studies that my research could have still accommodated. But they wrote back to me and said, I need GRE. And I'm like, I did masters in the US. And on top of that, you said the GRE is supposed to show that a person could be successful. And if I have done masters with a certain GPA in your society, then you should know I can be successful in a, and moreover, I'm an African, right? Why are you asking me to write GRE, which is designed in the US for you know? But they insisted that without GRE, my application could not be considered. So away from the language exam, almost most schools in the US, they are going to ask you for GRE. So it is important to know where you want to go, right? If your target is a US schools, then you would want to write something like the GRE way before you start the application. Yeah, that's what I wanted to add.
Bill, is this something you wanted to add?
Oh no, just when Della asked about the English proficiency, I just wanted to assure her that, yeah, it's same. KNUST, if you are here and then you are from KNUST, you can go to the English department. Their HOD or the admin, talk to them. I think our time we paid like 5 cedis. I don't know how much it costs right now. You just go there and then it will be ready in like 3 days or same day, something like that. They'll give you the proficiency certificate. You just upload it as part of your application, and that becomes your English proficiency.
All right, thank you very much, Bill. Frank Tay Oblim, if you are available, please ask your question.
Okay, please. I want to add something to what Na question what he asked first. I want to, from experience, I want to say something. We don't, since 2016, I've been working in CSR water research. So it's like I worked for over 6-7 years before I want to go to school. So then I wanted to apply for masters. I tried 3 good years. I couldn't get the scholarship. I will go to the end to say, they will tell you, oh, you have to seek to your MRC, or your MRC will give you a final approval in Ghana here. Let's say, for instance, I apply for Netherlands, University of Twente. I'll go through the application, everything. At the end of the last minute, they will tell you the MRC has to approve before I'll get the grant. And for 3 good years, I applied for World Bank, I applied for NUFIC, and other scholarships. I did get it. So then eventually later, I decided to apply for KNUST to do my master's there. When I applied, I had a partial scholarship, and I'm doing my master's as I'm speaking to you right now. But like, what I want to say to Yiman Rena is that even if he's applying for outside and he's not getting it, fine. Local here, he may also get some scholarship in any of the university in Ghana here, and he can look for it. Even the government self is giving a scholarship out, so he can look for that. But my question is, both speakers has not mentioned anything concerning age limit. So I want to ask a question. Applying for those scholarship, PhD, masters, what are the age limits that one can, fall on? Thank you.
Okay, I will determine someone to answer your question very soon, Frank, but I think you made a very important point. I mean, no one is asking anybody to go outside if the opportunity is not there. It's better having a degree from home also if the opportunity is there. And like you made quite important points there. There are quite a number of even government organizations, and I can say that GNPC does a lot of these local awards where thousands of Ghanaians are given scholarship. And so people just have to be on the lookout and then also search. Bill, can you answer his question on
that? Yeah, I'm very happy he brought that point out. And I will say for Canada as PhD masters, there is no age limit. In fact, Canadians, when they're always happy to see elderly people, aged grown-ups in class, because for most of the professors, they get to develop good relationship with these kind of people, and they always look up to them as someone to share experience with. One of my colleagues, when we started the course last 2 years, her mom, I think, we are almost the same age, Justina. She's from Nigeria, and her mom was in final year. Her mom is, I think, 50 plus, PhD. Yeah. And another thing is, I met this Ugandan guy. He has been a dean of a faculty in Uganda. He was a Sudanese refugee, when the war broke out. So Sudanese grew up in Uganda. He has worked with UNHCR. He has worked with World Bank. I mean, he has tons of experience, 20 years plus. He has been the dean of a faculty in Uganda, and he's now coming for a law, because he initially had a law degree or something from Harvard, and he was like, he needed a PhD. So he came for a law PhD in my school. And guess what? Such people are very much valued when it comes to scholarship. This Ugandan guy, Sudanese Ugandan guy, he had won the Trudeau Scholarship, which is one of the prestigious, given to 17 people within and outside Canada. 17 people within and outside Canada is very prestigious. And he also won the scholarship I also won, which is also very prestigious, given to 50 people inside and outside Canada. This guy, he's always picking up the scholarships. And before he even graduated, he had a job at the University of British Columbia, one of Canada's prestigious law schools over there. And so he even moved there to go and work before his graduation. So you know what? It's about what you have to sell. It's about the ambition you have. And it's about your ability to connect to the professors. Tell them that, you know what? I need this degree. This is why I need it. And that's it. Okay. And sorry, and if you are a mother, please, 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 your age, your kids, please don't let these things. Canada, what I know, your kids will be well taken care of. You'll be given a lot of social support to make sure you are good. And if things get crazy, you can take a leave with pay. You can take a leave of absence with pay. Thank you.
Okay, Della, would you want to add something to the age limitation? I think I've seen some situation where there were age limitation to masters and PhD.
Yeah, so I saw that sometimes depending on the organization that you are connected to, rarely you see age limit, because I think there was this program for African leadership something in the West, and then I saw a 35 age limit for the PhD, which was really surprising for me. So somehow my mind sort of usually factor those things in, and sometimes the school you are applying to may not have age limit directly, but then what happens is that opportunities that you may want to get access to while you are there, those opportunities have age limits. So sometimes that's the issue you face. Other than that, I agree with Balkisu totally. Don't let your age stop you. It's not even a factor at all. Oh, I wanted to ask something about gender is important now. What Malikisu
It's very important.
yeah, what Malikisu keeps mentioning about mothers is super important.
It's
So
very important, please.
I was super surprised to realize that for my kid, the Gates Cambridge Scholarship was willing to give my kid as much as £10,000.
Good.
Yes.
Yeah.
So these days, they are actually factoring those things in. They know that usually it's difficult. It's difficult for people to leave their kids and go to school, etc. So some of the scholarships actually try to make life easier for you. And look at, listen to something. I don't know, Kofi, maybe Kofi can tell us about Australia, but I know for US, Canada, UK, all these places give a separate visa for your kids and your partner to come with you if they want. So you don't have a problem at all if you are a parent and you want to go to school. Don't let us stop you. Yeah. And feel free to contact me. I can vouch for myself. Feel free to contact me if you are a mom and then you feel like some of these things may be a problem for you. We can talk more about it later. Yeah.
All right, Kofi, do you have any specific experience to share on the age limitations?
Yeah, before I touch on the age issue, I would want to talk of the first aspect of what the gentleman said, which is local universities and scholarships available at home. Another place that people don't look at is ECOWAS scholarship and then AU scholarships. Yeah, these are two opportunities that are available. They sponsor you to study in other African countries. And a lot of people don't look at that side. So it makes competition a little bit less intense. So I think that is something that some people might want to consider. I had a friend who got a scholarship to go to, I think, Senegal. At that time, yeah, he wanted to stop because he thought, no, for a scholarship, you should be coming to UK, Australia, US, that kind of stuff. So I was like, okay. He contacted me for my advice and I asked him two questions. Are you having a job now? He said no. How much are they going to be paying him after the school fees? He said, I think $600 a month or something like that. And so because you are not getting UK university, you would want to let that go and then you sit in the house. So especially if it is masters, if you want to go outside Africa to study, and you are just from undergraduate level and you decide to apply for either ECOWAS or AU scholarship, you go to say South Africa, Kenya or whatever to study. Just as Dela said, you could start from a school that is low in terms of rank, but once you get the qualification, you can still move up with it. It doesn't really matter. The qualification is very, very important as compared to the school. So it's good to set your bar high, but especially when you try 1, 2, and it's not working, probably you need to lower your standard a little bit and look at other places as well. With the age limit issue, it depends on, again, Dela and Bekisu have already touched on that, but let me add a little bit to it, which is you need to look at where you are going. If you are trying to apply to, say, China, age limit is very important. Most Chinese applications will tell you at most 32 years for masters and at most 40 years for PhD. They wouldn't sponsor anybody apart from those who fall within those two age groups. And there are a few universities scholarship that if it is linked to the UN, I've forgotten the specific title or the institution, but I think it is linked to the UN, and they also, I wanted to apply to that, and they also had age limit, because I think the idea is that after training you, how many years do you have to be able to serve? Yeah. So they are looking at the investment and then how they're going to get at least something from you in terms of service back to society. So there are few, for China, it's always the case. most Chinese scholarships you would see has age limit. 40 years at most for PhD, 32 or 30 sometimes for masters. Apart from that, Australia currently, UK, I have experienced that they don't really care about your age. So just know what, when you are applying, see yourself as a product that you are going to sell.
Yeah.
Which market will they buy my product, basically? That's it. So you look at yourself, I have this advantage, I have this disadvantage. So where will I be able to sell myself best? And look at those things and then put your application out there, and
All right.
you'll be able to make it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And Kenneth Jamara, I don't know whether it's a question or it's a contribution you want to make. Please go ahead.
Kenneth is muted, so you can unmute him.
I unmuted him, or I'm sure he himself. So Kenneth, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Richard and Della, Bediako, and Bilkisu for this very insightful presentations. I just wanted to add something to what you've already said. When it comes to masters, I think most of the times many people focus on the very popular scholarships, and it's usually UK, Canada, and US and Australia. But then they don't really look at Europe, because there are other European countries that tuition is free. You just have to get an admission and at least show a proof that you will be able to study there. Most of these universities are in Europe, and they have very good educational systems like Finland, Germany, Poland, most of them, Norway. So you, as a fresh graduate or somebody with a bachelor's who wants to do masters, I would say that you should explore this. Germany, for instance, they have this DAAD scholarship, which is also one of the best scholarships in Europe. And Germany, after school, there are other opportunities for you to work and all that. Also, there is Erasmus Mundus scholarship, which is also one of, it's actually sponsored by the European Union, the EU. So what happens is that they have partner universities. So as a master's student, which is 2 years course, you have the opportunity to study in 3 different countries, even though you are studying one program. Maybe you have a semester in Edinburgh, you have another semester in, let's say, Barcelona, another, let's say, in France or Italy. Yeah, so it is also very good because you'll be able to get different experiences, and it's 2 years, and they don't really ask you to go home after your studies. If you are having a bachelor's and you want to go for a master's, for now, I will advise you that go for a scholarship or an opportunity that will not limit you and say, oh, after school, come back to your country. It's good for us to come back to our countries, but then you also go and you see another opportunity, or you see that your potential fits into a context. Maybe you even want to go for a PhD, but you don't have. So I would urge those who want to do specifically masters to look at some of these opportunities. And also for PhD, there are project-based PhDs around, which mostly they call it studentship. So what happens is that, especially those in the sciences and tech, all those, they have like many organizations like the EU, the DFID, the USAID, like those big international corporations. Sometimes they have projects running, like projects for like 10 years. So they always recruit people with masters who want to work on the project and at the same time study and earn a PhD. And it's mostly in Europe. So if you are within those sciences, even though they already define the project, so your PhD will be tailored to that project, but then you'll be paid. It's more like a full-time work, and also you are using it to get your PhD. I've seen many people, especially those in the sciences, who use this route and they were able to get through for the PhD. So you can also explore that. You can for Europe-based, there's this jobs.ac.uk website. They advertise all the studentship, and also findaphd.com. So those interested in PhD, especially those in the sciences, you can explore that. Thank you very much for this very important session, and it's very good joining and learning from your experiences.
All right, thank you very much, Kenneth. Albert.
Yeah, I think earlier Joseph asked